A friend of mine, old friend, actually very old, he's dead. That's as old as he gets, I'm afraid. So, but a wonderful guy, he was a wonderful philosopher. He used to talk about the difference between the task and achievement senses of verbs. You know, you can be engaged in the activity of something, but not really be achieving it. It's like dieting. It's a very good example, you know. There he is, he's dieting. Is he losing any weight? Not really. Teaching is a word like that. You can say, there's Deborah, she's in room 34, she's teaching. But if nobody's learning anything, she may be engaged in the task of teaching, but not actually fulfilling it. The role of a teacher is to facilitate learning. That's it. And part of the problem is, I think, that the culture of, the dominant culture of education has come to focus on not teaching and learning, but testing. Now, testing is important. Standardized tests have a place. But they should not be the dominant culture of education. They should be diagnostic. They should help. You know, if I go for a medical examination, I want some standardized tests. I do. You know, I want to know what my cholesterol level is compared to everybody else's on a standard scale. I don't want to be told on some scale my doctor invented in the car. You know, your cholesterol is what I call level orange. Really? Is that good? We don't know. But all that should support learning. It shouldn't obstruct it, which of course it often does. So in place of curiosity, what we have is a culture of compliance. Our children and teachers are encouraged to follow kind of routine algorithms rather than to excite that power of imagination and curiosity.
The first standardized tests that we know of were administered in China over 2,000 years ago, during the Han Dynasty. Chinese officials used them to determine aptitude for various government posts. The subject matter included philosophy, farming, and even military tactics. Standardized tests continued to be used around the world for the next 2 millennia, and today they're used for everything from evaluating stair climbs for firefighters in France to language examinations for diplomats in Canada to students in schools. Some standardized tests measure scores only in relation to the results of other test takers. Others measure performances on how well test takers meet predetermined criteria. So, the stair climb for the firefighter could be measured by comparing the time of the climb to that of all other firefighters. This might be expressed in what many call a bell curve. Or it could be evaluated with reference to set criteria, such as carrying a certain amount of weight, a certain distance, up a certain number of stairs. Similarly, the diplomat might be measured against other test-taking diplomats, or against a set of fixed criteria which demonstrate different levels of language proficiency. And all of these results can be expressed using something called a percentile. If a diplomat is in the 70th percentile, 70% of test takers scored below her. If she scored in the 30th percentile, 70% of test takers scored above her. Although standardized tests are sometimes controversial, they're simply a tool. As a thought experiment, think of a standardized test as a ruler. A ruler's usefulness depends on 2 things. First, the job we ask it to do. Our ruler can't measure the temperature outside or how loud someone's singing. Second, the ruler's usefulness depends on its design. Say you need to measure the circumference of an orange. Our ruler measures length, which is the right quantity, but it hasn't been designed with the flexibility required for the task at hand. So, if standardized tests are given the wrong job or aren't designed properly, they may end up measuring the wrong things.
The power of yet. I heard about a high school in Chicago where students had to pass a certain number of courses to graduate, and if they didn't pass a course, they got the grade not yet. And I thought that was fantastic, because if you get a failing grade, you think, I'm nothing, I'm nowhere. But if you get the grade not yet, you understand that you're on a learning curve. It gives you a path into the future. Not yet also gave me insight into a critical event early in my career, a real turning point. I wanted to see how children coped with challenge and difficulty. So I gave 10-year-olds problems that were slightly too hard for them. Some of them reacted in a shockingly positive way. They said things like, "I love a challenge," or, "You know, I was hoping this would be informative." They understood that their abilities could be developed. They had what I call a growth mindset. But other students felt it was tragic, catastrophic. From their more fixed mindset perspective, their intelligence had been up for judgment, and they failed.
In the traditional academic model, we group students together, usually by age and around middle school age and perceived ability, and we shepherd them all together at the same pace. And what typically happens, let's say we're in a middle school pre-algebra class and the current unit is on exponents. The teacher will give a lecture on exponents, then we'll go home, do some homework. The next morning we'll review the homework, then we'll get another lecture, homework. That'll continue for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then we get a test. And on that test, maybe I get a 75%, maybe you get a 90%, maybe you get a 95%. And even though that test has identified gaps in our knowledge, I didn't know 25% of the material. Even the A student, what was the 5% they didn't know? Even though we've identified those gaps, the whole class will then move on to the next subject. Probably a more advanced subject that's going to build on those gaps. It might be logarithms or negative exponents. And that process continues, and you immediately start to realize how strange this is. I didn't know 25% of the more foundational thing, and now I'm being pushed to the more advanced thing. And this will continue for months, and it'll continue for years, all the way to at some point, I might be in an algebra class or a trigonometry class, and I hit a wall. And it's not because algebra is fundamentally difficult, or because the student isn't bright. It's because I'm seeing an equation, and they're dealing with exponents, and that 30% that I didn't know is showing up. And then I start to disengage. And to appreciate how absurd that is, imagine if we did other things in our life that way. Say home building.